Good morning participants, welcome to the SOYAM course. Today we will talk about the lecture number 4 of week 3, means week 3 lecture number 4. Course name is Introductory Animal Physiology, module is Muscle Physiology, and today lecture topic is Physiology of Smooth and Cardiac Muscle. So, myself Dr. Mukesh Kumar Bharti, I am assistant professor in the Department of Veterinary Physiology and Biochemistry, Faculty of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Banaras Hindu University. So, let us see what are the things we will see in today's lecture. So, before going to the start with this actual physiology of smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle, we will discuss in brief about the what is called as a muscle fatigue. Then we will discuss what is called as a rigor mortis, then types of muscle contraction, then we will see what are the different types of muscle curve is there, what are the properties of that muscle curve is there. After that we will see what is the microstructure of a smooth muscle, then how contraction has been takes place in the smooth muscle, and then finally we will see what is the called as a cardiac muscle and how contraction has been taking place in the cardiac muscle. So, all these things we will discuss one by one. So, let us start with the first that what is called as a muscle fatigue. So, as we all know, fatigueness takes place when we do some kind of activity, especially when we are doing the physical activity, then our body have some kind of fatigueness. When we do some kind of mental activity, then we have the mental fatigueness is there. So, since we are discussing the muscle physiology, so we will discuss mostly about the muscles, why muscles have the fatigueness. So, definition of muscle fatigue is that a prolonged and strong contraction of a muscle lead to the muscle fatigue. It means ki if you do work for a longer period of time, then the fatigueness will takes place. Because why fatigueness occurring? Because the depletion of the ATP, that is energy source, is getting depleted. ATP is getting depleted and sufficient amount of ATP is not available for the muscle contraction and relaxation. That is why the fatigueness has been taking place. And also you know that glycogen is the important source of energy for the muscle, and that glycogen is also getting depleted when we are doing continuous type of work. So, muscle fatigue is directly proportional to the rate of depletion of the muscle glycogen. Now, what is the cause for this fatigueness? One cause is that there is a diminished transmission of nerve signal through the neuromuscular junction. If transmission will be diminished, means if transmission will be less from the nerve to the muscle, then the proper excitation will not be takes place, and if proper excitation will not takes place, then the fatigueness will develop. So, this is the one reason that if there is a diminished transmission of impulse. Second is that if there will be the interruption of the blood flow to the contracting muscle, if proper amount of blood will not be flow through the muscles, then also the muscle will not get sufficient energy, and then that will lead to the development of a muscle fatigue. So, that is the basic concept regarding the muscle fatigue and how it is developing. The next thing we will discuss what is called as the rigor mortis. As you all knows, rigor mortis, from if you will split this into rigor means stiffness and mortis means death. So, rigor mortis literally means ki the stiffness occurring after the death. So, we will discuss what is called as the rigor mortis, and physiological significance measurement means how we can see that how it is developing, what are the phases of rigor mortis. We are not going to see the pathological conditions, we will only see the physiological conditions, how it is developing in animals once they are dying. So, that is the definition of rigor mortis, is that rigidity that occurs after death, that is referred as a rigor mortis. Now, what is happening here? The actin and the myosin filaments remain in a continuous contracted state because the sufficient ATP is not available to bring about the relaxation. So, why rigor mortis is developing? It is developing because the sufficient amount of ATP is not available for the relaxations. Important thing, when I discussed in the previous class, that energy is required both for the contraction as well as for the relaxation. So, once the contraction has been takes place, energy is needed for the relaxation only. So, during the after the death, since the energy is getting depleted, no more ATP is available. So, that is why if ATP is not available, the relaxation will not take place. That is why muscle will remain in a stiff condition. So, that is called as a rigor mortis. So, lack of ATP will hinder the relaxation, and relaxation only occurs due to the autolysis caused by the lysosomes, that is 12 to 24 hours after the death. So, initially stiffness will take place, but later on the muscles will be loosened because of the autolysis will take place in the muscles, and then because of that the muscles will be loosened. So, those muscles that were active most just before the death will develop rigor mortis first. So, one of the important concept in the rigor mortis is that all muscle will not develop rigor mortis at one time. Those muscles which are very active, especially the head muscles, because brain is working every time. So, those muscles which are very active before death, that muscle will develop rigor mortis first, and those muscles which are less active, they will develop rigor mortis later on. And this does not start in all muscles simultaneously, and it starts from the head toward the tail. So, rigor mortis setup will start first in the head region, and then will it move toward the tail. So, that is the concept of the rigor mortis. Now, what are the phases of rigor mortis? There are basically 4 phases there for the rigor mortis. First, in the first phase, what is happening here, the muscle will remain normal for some time after the somatic death, but rapid onset in the vigorous exercise prior to death like epilepsy or tetanus or electrocution. So, here in this phase muscle will remain in the normal condition, but rapid onset will take place in some condition, like if the animals having the epilepsy or some kind of tetanus development is there or some kind of electrocution is there. In that case the rapid onset will takes place, but normally in this phase muscle will remain in the normal condition. Second phase is that here the ATP will fall below a critical level, less than 85% cross bridge will remain functional, and in this case muscle will become viscous, inelastic, inextensible and dehydrated, and it will become stiff. So, stiffness will start in the second phase only, because now the ATPs are getting degrading, and I told that since ATP is required for the relaxation. So, relaxation is not taking place, that is why stiffness is getting developed from the second phase onward. In the third phase what is happening, fully development of rigor mortis will take place and ATP will fall below 15%. So, in the third phase fully development of rigor mortis will take place, and the fourth phase is that the phase of resolution, means rigidity will disappear due to the denaturation by the autolysis and acid production during the rigidity. So, in the fourth phase what is happening, the resolution will take place, whatever rigidity is there that will disappear. Now, muscle will become flaccid because the autolysis has been takes place, and that will causes the flaccidity of the muscle. So, these are the 4 phases of the rigor mortis. Now, we will discuss what is called as a contraction and what are the types of contraction. So, contraction, if you will say, it is defined as the internal event of the muscle with change in either length or tension. So, contraction will take place if there will be either change in the either length will change or tension will change. So, based on this either change in the length or change in the tension, there are 2 types of muscle contraction. One is called as a isotonic contraction and another is called as a isometric contraction. Isotonic contraction and isometric. Isotonic means the tone or the tension will remain same, but the length will change, but isometric means length will remain same, but the tension or tone will change. So, isotonic contraction is that the contraction in which the tension will remain same and the length of the muscle fiber will be altered. And in case of the isometric, the length will remain same, but the length of the muscle fiber will remain same, but the tension will be changed. So, here are the some properties I have listed here. What will happen in case of the isotonic and as well as isometric contraction? In case of the property, if we will take shortening of the muscle, in case of the isotonic, yes, shortening will take place, but in isometric no shortening will take place. Tension, if you talk about the tension, isometric contraction there will be no change in tensions, but in isometric contraction there will be the change in tension. Amount of heat generated, it will be more in case of the isotonic. Work done, if you will talk about the work done, isotonic contraction, yes, work done will be takes place, but in case of the isometric contraction there will be the no work done. So, what are the example of isotonic and the isometric contractions? Isotonic contraction is example is that lifting a bucket off the floor. So, that will be the tension will remain same, but length will change. In case of the isometric contraction, what is the example for that? If you push against the wall, if you push against the wall, there is no change in the length, but tension will increase. So, that is the properties and example of the isotonic and the isometric contractions. Now, we will see what is called as a muscle contraction curve. This is also very important, because the means if you plot the some kind of work on the graph paper, that will be called as a muscle curve. So, graphical representation of contraction is called as a muscle curve. So, here 4 important points are there that we need to understand. These points are called as a, if you see the graph of this muscle contraction curve, you will find the 4 important points. One is called as a point of stimulus, means the time when the stimulus is applied over the some kind of muscles, that is called as a point of stimulus. Then second is called as a point of contraction, means the time when the muscle begins to contract, that is called as a PC. Then a point of maximum contraction, means the muscle will contract maximally, after that the relaxation process will start. And last point is the point of maximum relaxation, the point when the muscles will completely relax. So, 4 points already I have depicted here: point of stimulus, point of contraction, point of maximum contraction, and point of maximum relaxations. Now, what are the periods in the muscle means curve is there? There are 3 important periods are there. One is called a latent period, another is called as a contraction period, and third is called as a relaxation period. So, we will understand what is called as a latent period. In latent period, it is called as a time interval between the point of stimulus and point of contraction. It is a time interval between the point of stimulus, means when the stimulus has been applied and once the contraction has been begin, that is called as a latent period. Here no contraction will takes place, but contraction will begin. So, what will happen here? The calcium ion will release from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, because stimulus has been applied. So, this stimulus will go and stimulate the muscle cells to release the sufficient amount of calcium, but no contraction will takes place. So, that is called as a latent period. Second is called as a contraction period, means contraction is the interval between the point of contraction and point of maximum contraction. So, what is happening here? Muscle will contract during this period and tension in the whole muscle will rise to the peak. So, maximum tension will be produced during point of contraction. And third is called as a point of relaxation. It means relaxation period is the interval between the point of maximum contraction and point of relaxation, and muscle will relax in this period. So, that is the important means about the what is the contraction, what is the means muscle curve, and what are the points we need to understand in this muscle curve. Now, we will discuss means regarding the physiology of smooth muscles. As we have given brief means a difference between the skeletal, smooth and cardiac muscle in the previous means initial classes. Today, we will see what are the important peculiarities there in case of the means smooth muscle as well as in case of the cardiac muscles. So, as already I have told that smooth muscle is named because there is no visible striations. As in case of the skeletal muscles, visible striations are there, means light band and dark band are appearing in the skeletal muscles. In case of the smooth muscles, that type of striation is not visible. Here the myofilaments are present and are composed of the contractile protein like actin and myosin, as in case of the skeletal muscles. However, the filaments are loosely organized than that of the skeletal muscles. So, here the filaments are loosely arranged, not as compact as in case of the skeletal muscles. So, it is an important functional part of the many organs, especially in case of the intestine, urinary bladder, ureter, blood vessels, uterus, iris and ciliary muscles. So, all these organs, these are mainly made up of the smooth muscles, and I told that smooth muscles are involuntary in nature, means our wish is not there. If they want to contract or relax, they will relax by their own, because this is involuntary in nature. So, these structures receive innervation from the autonomic nervous system and automatically it will contract and relax, but many may respond directly or indirectly due to the stretch or extracellular fluid change. So, generally they have the autonomic innervation, but if you provide some kind of stretch, then also this kind of muscle may contract. Now, we will say what are the types of smooth muscles. Generally, basically the smooth muscles are of 2 types. One is called as a single unit smooth muscle, also known as a unitary and visceral and second is called as a multi-unit smooth muscle. So, two types are there, single unit smooth muscle and multi-unit smooth muscle. One by one we will see what is called as a single unit smooth muscle. So, cells in this type of smooth muscles are joined with a gap junctions to provide the mechanical and electrical connection between the cells. So, that is very important peculiar feature is there both in case of the smooth muscle as well as in case of the cardiac muscle, they have a gap junctions. These type of cells are absent in case of the skeletal muscles. So, they have a gap junctions, they are attached with the gap junctions. So, the stimulation will move very fast through these gap junctions. The electrical connections permit the propagation of action potential directly from cell to cell. So, you can see here these called as single unit. Why it is called single unit? Because all cells are attached, they are just separated through a gap junctions, they are not much, individual cells are not there, all cells are attached together and they have the innervation. So, they will contract as a single unit, as a one unit, that is why name has been given single unit smooth muscle, means if they will contract, all the cells will contract together, that is why name has been given single unit. The difference will be there for the multi-unit is that in multi-unit all the cells are separately innervated. So, they will contract separately, here they will contract singly, that is why name has been given single unit. The spreading of action potential and the contraction that is generated allow a group of muscles to act together as a single unit, that is why name has been given single unit. It is this type of muscle will found in the most viscera like gut, bile duct, uterus and blood vessels. So, all these organs have single unit smooth muscles. Now, what is multi-unit smooth muscles? Each muscle fiber innervated separately. This term is important. Here all the muscle cells are innervated separately. So, they will contract separately. One cell will contract separately, another cell will contract separately. Therefore, each fiber can contract independent of the other cells. That is why name has been given multi-unit. The conduction of impulse from one cell to next cell does not exist as the gap junctions are not prevalent between these cells. As in case of the single unit, you have seen that gap junctions are there and the impulse what if it comes to one cell, it will go to the next cell through the gap junctions, but here that kind of cells are not there. So, that is why they are contract separately. The individual cells may exist in a bundles, but not in a sheets. They will exist in a bundle, but not in a sheets. This type of muscle is found in the ciliary body, iris of the eye, arrector pili muscles of the skin and the hair and the walls of the large arteries. So, all these organs have multi-unit smooth muscles. So, distribution of muscles is different in the different organ. Then what is the microstructure of the smooth muscles? The smooth muscles is of a spindle shape and there is no cross striation, already we have explained. They have a myofibrils or the sarcolemma that are easily visible with the light microscope. The filaments are present in the form of actin and myosin, but no orderly arrangements are taking place in case of the smooth muscles. Interaction between the actin and myosin filament, that is sliding filaments, are believed to be the basis for the smooth muscle contraction, but characteristic shortening of the sarcomere is not seen because there is no distinct organization of the filament. As we have seen in case of the skeletal muscles, sarcomere are getting shortened. During the sliding filament theory, we have seen that sarcomeres are getting shortened. That type of arrangement is not here in case of the smooth muscles. A sarcoplasmic reticulum which accumulate calcium is present, but not as extensive or highly organized as in case of the skeletal muscles. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is also present here, but it is not as extensive as in case of the skeletal muscle. Very peculiar properties of this smooth muscle is that they have a dense body. Dense body are a point of attachment for the actin filament. So, in the skeletal muscle we have seen that actin filaments are attached with the Z disc and that contract during the contraction. So, that type arrangement is not here, but in case of the smooth muscle, in place of Z disc another structure is there, that is called as a dense bodies that attach the actin filament. Here you can see these are the dense bodies and which attach mainly the actin filament. They are not attaching with the myosin filament. Dense bodies only attaching with the actin filament. So, dense body are rigid stable structures that retain their original shape and attachment during the contraction. In this manner, the dense body correspond to the Z line of the skeletal muscle. As I told that this dense body correspond to the Z disc or Z line of the skeletal muscle. Because of the presence of dense body, a smooth muscle appears wrinkled in appearance. So, because of the presence of the dense body only, smooth muscles are wrinkled in appearance. Ratio of the actin to myosin filament is 15:1 instead of 2:1 as in case of the skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle actin to myosin ratio was 2:1, but in case of the smooth muscle this ratio is 15:1. Another important structural difference is there that it have a smooth muscle have means T tubules are absent, and in place of T tubule another structure is there that is called as a caveolae. So, in case of the smooth muscle T tubules are absent, but like depression like structure is there in the muscle fiber, invagination is there, that is called as a caveolae, and it is believed that this caveolae is act like a T tubule as in case of the skeletal muscle, because rudimentary sarcoplasmic reticulum is found near the caveolae. So, it is believed that this caveolae correspond to the T tubule of the skeletal muscle. Now, the source of calcium ion that causes the contraction. So, sarcoplasmic reticulum as already told that is only slightly developed in the smooth muscle. So, for the muscle contraction the extracellular calcium is required for the smooth muscle contraction. So, instead all the calcium ion that causes the contraction enter the muscle from the extracellular fluid. Since sarcoplasmic reticulum is not well developed as in case of the skeletal muscle, smooth muscle require amount of calcium from the outside, that is from the extracellular fluid at the time of the contraction of the muscles. That is, the concentration of calcium ion in the extracellular fluid is greater compared to the inside of the smooth muscle cells, and this causes rapid diffusion of calcium ion into the cells from the extracellular fluid when the calcium pores are open. So, during the when the stimulus comes, then at that time the calcium pores will open and more amount of calcium will enter from the extracellular fluid inside the cells for the contraction of the smooth muscles. Therefore, the force of contraction of smooth muscle usually is highly dependent upon the extracellular fluid ion concentration, fluid calcium ion concentration. That is the entirely different from the skeletal muscle. A skeletal muscle does not require extracellular calcium for the contraction, but a smooth muscle and the cardiac muscle require extracellular calcium for the contraction of the muscles. To cause relaxation of the smooth muscle after it has contracted, the calcium ion must be removed from the intracellular fluid. So, once it has been released, for the relaxation to take place, calcium ion must be taken out from the inside of the cells for the relaxation, and this taken place by the calcium pump is present that will take the calcium ion inside and it will take calcium out of the cells. So, if we will talk about the smooth muscle contraction, smooth muscle contraction is called as a tonic contraction. Why it is called tonic contraction? And this is a very slow process, slow contraction is there for the smooth muscle. So, tonic contraction means do not generally display any kind of action potential or any kind of electrical activity, and there will be the slower shortening velocity, but more effective maintaining the tone. The smooth muscle contraction is slow type, but it will effective for longer period of time. You see how the excitation contraction taking place in the smooth muscle. So, as we have seen that in case of the skeletal muscle, the calcium ion will bind with the troponin C component of the troponin, and then that will change in the conformation of the tropomyosin, and then actin will bind with the myosin filament. So, that is the in case of the skeletal muscle, but in case of the smooth muscle little difference is there. In place of troponin, smooth muscle cells contain large amount of another regulatory protein that is called as a calmodulin. So, troponin C is not present here, but in place of troponin another means calcium regulating protein is there that is called as a calmodulin. So, this calmodulin will bind with the calcium and then the conformation will change takes place, and then the muscle contraction will taking place. So, how the things are taking place that we will see here in this diagram also you can see once the means calcium will comes from the extracellular fluid, and then it will stimulate the sarcoplasmic reticulum which is present inside the muscle fiber to release more amount of calcium, and some more amount of calcium is also coming from the extracellular fluid. So, these calcium will bind with the calmodulin protein, and then the calcium calmodulin means combination will takes place, and then that activates the myosin light chain kinase MLCK, myosin light chain kinase. So, if the myosin light chain kinase will be activate, that will lead to the activation of the phosphorylation and then the muscle contraction will takes place. If myosin light chain kinase will be dephosphorylated, that will lead to the relaxation of the smooth muscles. So, that is the how the contraction and relaxation is taking place for the smooth muscles. Already I have explained that this calcium will come, it will bind with the calmodulin. So, this calcium calmodulin will activate the light chain myosin called as a MLCK, myosin light chain kinase. So, if phosphorylation will takes place, muscle contraction will takes place. If dephosphorylation will takes place, muscle relaxation will takes place. Contraction will takes place once actin will bind with the myosin head, and relaxation will takes place once it will detach from the myosin head. Then how the cessation will takes place? Cessation will here the importance is there that one important enzyme is there, that is called as a myosin phosphatase. So, myosin phosphatase play very important role in the muscle relaxation in case of the smooth muscles. So, this will help in the dephosphorylation of the myosin light chain kinase. So, once this will act, that will causes the relaxation of the smooth muscles. So, what is the difference between the smooth and the skeletal muscle contractions? Smooth muscle contraction, the cross bridge head will detach in a much slower manner. As I told that smooth muscle contraction is much slower, but skeletal muscle is this contraction is very fast. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is very less developed, whereas sarcoplasmic reticulum highly developed in case of the skeletal muscle. Calcium pump are very much slower in case of the smooth muscle, here it is very faster, and smooth muscles require much less energy as compared to the skeletal muscle for the sustained contraction. For much longer time of contraction, smooth muscle require very less energy compared to that of the skeletal muscles. So, this slowness of onset of contraction and relaxation is known as a one important mechanism is there, that is called as a latch mechanism, and this latch mechanism is the property of the smooth muscle that help in the prolonged contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles. The importance of this latch mechanism is that it maintain the prolonged tonic contraction in the smooth muscle for longer period of time with very little use of energy. So, in this mechanism they are using very less energy and they will remain contracted for the longer period of time. So, that is called as a latch mechanism. Now, coming to the cardiac muscle, already means for the cardiac muscle we have given brief means difference between the skeletal, smooth and the cardiac muscle in the first classes, and at that time I have told that this especially the mitochondria is very highly developed in case of the cardiac muscles, because they require more amount of energy, and I told that cardiac muscles are required for the contraction every time, every minute, every second. So, they require more amount of energy. Now, we will see how the contraction and relaxation will takes place in the cardiac muscle. So, cardiac muscle already like a smooth muscle is also involuntary in nature, and it have a means it consists of largely sarcoplasm, then myofibrils, then sarcoplasmic reticulum and the transverse tubules and sarcolemma. The most striking difference in the presence of intercalated disc, gap junctions, and it act as a functional syncytium. So, most striking difference between the skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscle is that the cardiac muscle have intercalated disc, and when we are discussing, we tell that this intercalated disc help in the propagation of impulse from one cell to the another cells, and it also have a gap junctions as we have discussed in the smooth muscle. It also have a gap junction for the proper propagation of the impulse, and it acts as a functional syncytium, means they will contract together, that is called as a functional syncytium. So, how the excitation contraction is taking place? As in case of the smooth muscle, we have seen that extracellular calcium is required for the contraction. Cardiac muscle also require extracellular calcium for the contraction. So, once the stimulus will takes place, the calcium will come from the extracellular and it stimulate the calcium which is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum inside the muscles, and then this will causes the muscle contraction by binding the actin and myosin filament. And how the relaxation will takes place? Once this released calcium will taken back by the again the sarcoplasmic reticulum, then the relaxation process will take place by detaching the myosin head from the actin filament. So, in this way the contraction and relaxation will taking place in the cardiac muscle. Now, the question is that why tetany is not taking place in case of the cardiac muscle. So, cardiac muscle is not getting tetanized and it should not get tetanized because they have to pump 24/7 and every second, every minute, every time. So, why tetany is not taking place? Important reason is that they have a long refractory period, as we have already discussed that refractory period is a time period during which if you provide any kind of another stimulus, they will not respond to that one. So, because of the presence of long refractory period and also because of the longer duration of action potential, plateau is there. So, because of these two reasons they do not get tetanized, means one stimulus will come and once they will over, they will not receive another kind of stimulus. This longer duration of action potential is due to presence of slow calcium channel is there, and that because of that longer duration of action potential is there, and also they follow the all or none law for the muscle contraction. All or none law of muscle contraction is there, that either they will contract or they will not contract. So, they are following this kind of rule, and because of the presence of all these features, the cardiac muscle generally do not get tetanized. So far we have discussed in this today's means lecture that what is called as the muscle fatigue, then we have discussed the what is called as the rigor mortis, then we have seen the muscle curve, what are the important features of muscle curve is there, and then we have seen the physiology of the how contraction is taking place in the smooth muscle as well as in case of the cardiac muscle. So, that is lead to the end of today's lecture. Thank you.